Okay, before the break, we were uh, kind of making the same game we made last week, a different version of it, but to look at a couple points. One of the big ones is have a game that you know the logic to, and then you can study the new tool. Uh, I didn't do it that way. I learned that the hard way. Like every time I'd go to a new game engine, I'd make a new game and then have to figure out the logic and the new tool. And I did that many, many, many times before I realized that, hey, since I already use a video game to learn a new programming language, why don't I learn that to learn a new game engine every time? Uh, so then I have sort of some go tos, and whenever I get a new engine, it makes it a lot easier because then you don't have to focus on the logic. There's also something kind of hidden in here. I guess a tip about when you go look things up. We saw the logic for this a Space Invaders game sort of game last week, right? Or maybe the week before. At some point recently, this time of the semester, all the days kind of blend together and the weeks kind of blend together. So I can't remember if it was last week, the week before, but we saw the logic for this already. So we already saw that most of what's left in the game is things we've already seen, right? That movement, the collision shapes. We're seeing more of the same thing. So whenever you're looking things up and go to check a tutorial, please keep that in mind, right? You don't need to follow every bit of that tutorial. You just need to figure out that basic, that one little feature you need to add in there, and then work that into your own stuff instead of trying to duplicate what somebody else has. This is also game engines. I use the words complex and complicated separately. Complicated is hard. Machines cannot do complicated things. Machines can do complex things. That means there's lots and lots and lots of steps. There's lots of parts involved, but they're all small, simple parts. And games kind of take that to the extreme. They're very complex things. There's lots of small parts working together. You just slight change in yours from following a tutorial might make a big difference in how everything interacts together. So remember to look at it's problem solving. Every problem is a new problem. So you just want to find those little pieces, not necessarily worry about try to follow somebody else's big picture. And like that script the stuff we've seen so far, right? We created this scene to represent our X-Wing ship, put a collision shape on it, things like that. Got it moving with a script, put a bunch of them into our level. And that covered a lot of the things that we're just getting ready to do again for a different item. I guess next up we need a turret, right? So I'm gonna add a new tab here for a new scene, and we'll just make it this way. This one's gonna move as well, right? When replicate Space Invaders, we probably want our turret going back and forth so we don't have to just shoot the things when they go right over top of us. So click another node. And just like we saw before, character body 2D will be a good one. We probably don't necessarily need the built-in movements, but that'll be a good starting. Seems like a reasonable place to start. At least makes sense. And this is going to be the laser turret, shooting lasers at our the spaceships that are invading. And just like we saw before, we can grab the graphics for it. I did a character body again, since it's going to move. I'm going to do this a little bit different because before we drug the graphics over there and then click that convert to mesh. So this time I'm just going to click the add a node button and add a mesh node in. Because the mesh instance 2D, I'll just add it in directly that way. Kind of look at it in response to somebody's question, but notice how over here on the mesh type and the texture is empty. So we can go ahead and fill those in. So if we make the texture, we can just do load and load in that image we have. So the graphics is the image for a turret, which is like it's like it's not showing up because we do have to assign a mesh as well. So probably a square, a quad mesh is a flat square that we want.
There's nothing. Very, 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 very tiny. Zoom in on your origin.
Oh, is it at the origin?
Yeah. Zoom in way, way far. Yeah.
Okay, so it's really, really small. So what did our scale do? We're going to transform scale 1 on that.
Currently 12,000 zoomed in to actually see it.
Where's the
12,000%.
That probably has to do with how we loaded it. Visibility. Good.
Oh yeah, if you just drag it in, it is
Yeah, let's go back to dragging it in.
huge compared.
Dragging it in works better. So that's how you do it in steps, but we need to go to the inspector and find the size of the texture, and there's extra things involved. But we can do it that way, but it also, yeah. That didn't
You have to zoom all along.
Yeah.
From 12,000 zoomed in to 79% zoomed in. Let's see what I have.
yeah, and then we can just convert it to a mesh instance. That worked a lot better. Does it all at once, and we don't have to manually.
So what you
Oh, when you select it, probably where it's going to go, and then when you select it, there's a button up here above the viewport. If you click that, there's the most common things you would want to do with it.
convert to mesh 2D.
Yes. As opposed to creating a mesh 2D instance and then adjusting everything until it's the right size. I think that was the size of the mesh was probably set by 1 to 1 by 1 by default. Actually, yeah. What that was when we create a new mesh instance 2D, new quad mesh, and if we look at the size, it's 1 by 1. And our picture was 227 by 227. So it automatically scaled it down from like what our mine was 200 something by 200 something. So it scaled it down to fit in that 1 by 1 block. So all the adjustments and stuff. So there's more adjustments to be made. A lot easier to drag it in, but we can do it the other way if we want. We're mostly just getting familiar with the new tool here, right? Oh, is my game still running? Huh? Okay. The debugger is open, so I thought maybe I left the game running. But, there's that. I don't think we really need a shape on this one. It's not going to move. We could put a shape. It wouldn't hurt. Just for good form. Usually we would want to.
It is also given the warning of no shape, but can you just ignore that if you don't
Yes.
need it?
Yes. Warnings can be ignored. Warnings might cause errors, but they're not errors yet. We know it'll be fine because all we're going to do is move left and right. We won't have any up or down. If we add a collision shape to it, like say a box or a polygon, I'll do the polygon again. So instead of the collision shape 2D, maybe we did want something where add a collision polygon, and we want to add in the functionality where the ships shoot back. Later versions of Space Invaders did that, right? The original one didn't, but later versions, they would shoot back. And it would make sense with our story that if we could shoot back against it. What? That was a weird message. So here we have a polygon shape like we saw before. Should probably rename these. So there's turret, and then turret underscore graphics or sprite, and then turret underscore shape. Consistency goes a long way. Right? I think everybody realized that even though we've only made small games in class so far, games are going to get very, very large very, very quickly. You're going to have a lot of stuff. So you want to be organized and consistent with names and things like that. It'll be very, very useful. So didn't make a new polygon, right? Let me stop that. There's probably going to be a bunch of messages coming in. Okay. Now I can restart the screen share. I don't see the button I was looking for. Where's the empty spot? Polygon. No. Go solids. So did we use a different collision shape last time?
For what?
For making a polygon.
If you do the polygon, you just click and it just starts building those. Like you just click where you want the borders of it to be, and you just start drawing. That's what it did when I was.
Okay.
There's no object to like drag and fit. You are basically tracing it.
Turret shape. So I don't think moving it down here is really necessary. I just like to do that. So then go to arrows. I'll click here. And just follow the shape around. It would get more precise. So if you want to add, like, we'd run out of time, probably run out of time for it today, but we'll see how to shoot. We'll have this shoot a laser, so it would be almost identical to have the ship shoot a laser back. Close that up. And then after it's closed up, we can drag them around and adjust the positions.
I am curious about the different colors and shapes inside of it,
though. Oh, that's how it's processing. So it's processing it as 3 shapes. 4 shapes. I don't know why 2 of them are red. But it's doing a rectangle and then 2 triangles. I don't know why it made one of the triangles red, so it doesn't show very clear. You can kind of see a little green line there where it separates. So we have a rectangle.
The green line is your
the coordinates.
Yeah, your coordinates. I think that is just.
Oh, I guess it is. Yeah. To make it looks for tries to optimize things. So it's using those shapes. I was expecting that to be 2 triangles. If we move this one up, maybe. And that's what I was expecting. So I was a ways off of square, but it uses triangles. Triangles process quicker, so it tries to triangulate everything. Rectangles are also fairly quick, so it looks like it used a box up there, a couple triangles there, and it couldn't figure out that the rest of that could be broken down into a triangle for some reason. But that's how the shape's making it up, so it shows the process.
Does it
Yeah, the fewer shapes we have to run through the processor, the quicker it's going to be. Because this is a very simple shape, right? Some polygons there's going to be a lot of things there, and we'll end up with a whole lot of stuff to pass through the processor.
Technically speaking, we faster to do one big rectangle instead of a rectangle.
Yes, because in this case, we could just draw one rectangle around it, and that would work fine.
Well, I meant as far as the way it's calculating stuff there with what it's doing? Would it not be simpler to do for it to have done, or is it just because of how things aren't square, basically?
It's because it's not squared off. Since I did it quickly, if it was squared off, somewhere in there it probably would.
Oh,
There you go. Like that. So once I get it nice and once I get it squared off, yeah, 2 rectangles would definitely be fastest. But really in this case, one, whoops.
there goes there.
Try that without clicking on it. It would,
For some reason it kicked me out.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
It would definitely be quicker in this case to just put one big rectangle around it. Be a lot easier,
But that wasn't, my question was with the way it was auto doing it when you drew it, that was.
looks like it's saving in the objects folder, so I'll call it turret. I'm not sure if I spelled that right or not. I'm pretty sure it has 2 R's. So then we have the one turret. We have a little bit of control over the turret, right? We can move left and right and fire. So I'm gonna give some input controls with those names. Input. So let's say left and right and fire. And I don't have a controller plugged up, but I can do the A and D keys. So A to move left. And while we're at it, maybe we want the joystick axis. We want the joypad axis 6 and joystick 3. That would go together. So that would be the, like say, left button. Yeah. So the Sony. So you can see that's good for Sony, Xbox. I mentioned earlier, when I double checked things, Stadia was shut down. That was the article I saw earlier this year. It must have been it was the final shutdown on it, not a revamp. I guess I thought I'm not sure what I thought. I completely misunderstood that one. And the Steam console isn't out yet. The Steam console was just announced in September. So it just went into production.
That's why I haven't heard of it.
Steam has a console coming. I guess we can count it, but
I guess they're throwing out the 2 times.
yes, as soon as it's out there, so we have PlayStation and Xbox. You can see. So this notice how we have 6 and 3. So that's your stick and the left button. Or if you actually had one with the USB connection, you could just plug it up to your computer and push that button so it could listen to it. And that way it would work on those things. If we paid the money to publish for Xbox or PlayStation. So that, and we can't listen for it, so we just go to joypad axes and what's it expanding? Where's right? Right.
I'm really curious about is that like more in building a UI to do it? Because a lot of games nowadays you have the player has the option of setting their own input.
Yes. So when you build that UI, there's something on there called.
They'll take an input and alter your code.
So if they decide to switch to say the circle button is 8 and the triangle button is 6, then that becomes your left. That would be the left and right controls.
So your code just based on the updates to use that.
Yes. Exactly. So that's why you want to use the input manager. And there's usually a left, right, up, down. Doesn't. Oh, I was on the one. Cancel that. And another one for the joypad buttons. See, we have more here. So right action, left action. I was expecting something to be a default fire button, but that's probably what they're calling action. Bottom action, right action, left action. Which one should be our fire button?
I'd say
Probably
0, bottom action.
Bottom action. Okay. I was gonna go with the right. I was just trying to think about what the movements would be. Because we never look at the controller, right? It's like way down here
Well,
staring at the
if
screen.
you were, it would probably be trigger, it'd be in a different spot.
Mhm.
Because you can see, it actually labels out Sony and Xbox and Nintendo what that is on theirs.
Yeah, but you'll see where that's going. Right? We set those up and then it'll automatically set up. And if the game is programmed to readjust those, it will use. That's what the numbers are that feed in. So there's our movements. So come back over here, select the turret, add a script. I was trying to put in the object. Whoops.
Up to 127 different.
Yes. There's a lot of buttons.
I guess that's for those really complicated simulator-esque genre thing. It's got a bunch of different things on it.
Oh.
Probably.
Or for just remapping this as a game controller. Right, you got a whole bunch of buttons there. So maybe or not the regular keyboards, but the basic keyboard shapes and no labels, just colors. Y'all are gamers, you've seen those before, right?
I was on your scheme.
Yeah, we can remap keyboard any way we want. Like it's really useful since we can't do math notation with these US keyboards. It's really useful to map LaTeX markup language to a keyboard. So then you have like a square root button instead of typing $sign, \SQRT, curly brace, bunch of stuff. You just have all that mapped to a button so that you can quickly type math notation. Because math is very inconvenient on these keyboards, right?
The only sort of stuff is just, you know, something with the star minus plus slash. That's the only thing I don't know. So
we have control over those anytime. We just don't do it very often for regular keyboards. Happens a lot more for gaming stuff. But like we saw before, we'll just create a script for our turret and then set up our movements. I don't think we need these movements. We don't need gravity, right?
Sorry.
sure.
I'll just get rid of all of that and we might as well have started with a new script, but what do we need? We're going to need a speed to move back and forth. So we'll create some sort of speed, a colon, then we'll type in the type, be a floating point data, and this should probably be slower than the ships, right? Add a little bit of challenge to the game. So I think the ships were 5. I'm going to type in the 3 here, but I'll still add that at export keyword. So now it will it'll show up in our inspector so that we can change it while the game's running and figure out what a good number is for it. That's just our first guess. This one's controlled, so we don't necessarily need any controls. We just need to listen to those inputs we just mapped. So if we saw this the other day, input dot is action just pressed will only happen once, and pressed will happen over and over again every frame. Probably want to hold down the button and keep moving, right? So I'm going to go with just pressed. Is action pressed, and then those controls we just mapped. Left. I'm just going to put pass, and then we'll type all this stuff in later. And we won't move left and right at the same time. Is action pressed right? So I'll put an else for that, or an elif. So if or otherwise, so if it's left or right, but we're never going to have both left and right push. Or if they are, we're going to ignore one of them. I guess in this case, it's always going to ignore right if we try to push both of them because it'll hit the if and then, or the first if and then jump right over that. The firing would be different. Right? We don't want to stop moving to fire. I guess in this game, it would probably be okay, but we often wouldn't want to stop moving, so we wouldn't want to put it on an else or another elif, right? So that's one or the other. So if we start a new if, input dot is action, did I spell input wrong? Yep. Input dot is action pressed, and then check that fire control we just mapped, whether it's an Xbox, PlayStation, keyboard, whatever control we just mapped to it.
Does it need to be is action or actions?
Is action pressed.
There's also the option for just action press here. No, I'm sorry, I did. The autofill.
Input.
See,
So if we hover over it, this is the active one of doing it. Remember, we can hit control and pull up documentation right here. So action pressed will simulate pressing the action. So that's how we would code pushing the fire button.
oh, that would be us. That'd be like a line of code we would do for like an AI song to do something.
Mhm.
We're outputting something that could also be controlled.
Yeah. So like with symbiotic cooperation in a game, we have the team following us along, and we might change between which character we're playing. And somebody else on the team, we don't want to recode it as an AI when there's already the controls set up. So we can just have it set in there so that it just calls the controls, just like it was another person holding the controller. And is action pressed, if we hold control and click on it, we'll get our documentation here. That gives us a Boolean, so true or false of returns true if you are pressing the action. So if the button's being pressed, what do we map that to? The bottom on the Xbox, the circle button on a PlayStation, or the space bar on a keyboard. If we're pushing it, it will give us true in that case. And there's just a little programming thing. Notice how I wasn't constantly trying to think about everything. All I was thinking about was the condition. So I set up all the conditions. And now we can go back and change our frame of mind for what happens in each case, as opposed to writing top to bottom, left to right. The computer needs our code to be in a certain way, top to bottom, left to right, but that's probably not the order we think about it in. So it can be a lot more productive jumping around back and forth and put it together in the order you think about it in. Just make sure it's the right order for the computer by the time we get to the end. So if action press is left, we're just changing position again, right? Some more transform stuff, position. Left and right is X and Y. I was getting ready to ask, but that's the exact same question I just asked last time, right? Left, we're subtracting whatever speed we set, and we'll just do some trial and error to figure out what the best speed is for that game. And it is always that way. Like the exact speed and values are going to depend on the animation, the size of the images, the backgrounds, the animations going on. All of it plays in together. So there's almost always a little bit of trial and error. You just take that first guess.
Also,
and then see how far you need to refine it.
How the feel of the game you want to do, if you want, you know.
Yeah,
you want your character to feel ponderous and slow or speedy or whatever.
Yes. Because the animation has to match it too, right? Because if you're ponderous and slow, but do your animation like the characters like this, that one looks like the character's tripping the whole time. If your character's taking long, if the animation's taking long strides and you're moving slowly, it's going to look like they're sliding or tripping. And if the character animation is taking small steps, but you're moving quickly, it looks like they're sliding. So they have to line up. The experience just gives you a better first guess.
Yeah.
Usually not the final result. Which again, we do most of the work here is done with working. with temporary work graphics, right? So when the art department finishes the final animation, that speed's probably going to need adjusted again. Even if they send us something like, here it is. A couple days later, we get another email from the art department. It's like, oh, we had an idea. We made some improvements and send it to us that. Then we have to adjust all the speeds and stuff to fit the new animation. So that'll get us moving left and right. So let's go save that character. Probably should have saved before now. There's our turret. So we can come over here. And for the Death Star that we're sitting on top of, I'm just going to drag that image in. Right, that's you just drag that in and then scale it out.
That blue block, the blue line that down at the bottom, that is
that's how much of the screen we see.
that's right.
Yes, so the blue line or purple line, it looks a little bit different on every screen, but whatever color it looks like, that's the preview of the whole play area. So I'm just going to stretch out that across the whole thing, and that's not going to do anything, right? That one's just sitting there. We don't have gravity applied or anything, so we can bring that in. And then for the level, we can grab that object we made from down here, that turret.tcsn and drag it up and make it a child, or yeah, we can drag it over here and place it. Looks a little bit big. Probably make it a little smaller, but whoops. So like that. Put that down a little and position, rotation, and scale. That's our transform data. Keep reminding you all about that. 0.5. That might be a bit big still. 0.25. I'll split the difference there. 0.37. Okay. And we set the turret on the ground, and we can move left and right. Should be able to move left and right. Probably a good time to give it a test. Move to the left and the right, and we're moving slower than the ship's attacking, which would be both accurate for the gun turrets on the Death Star against the X-Wings, and add a little bit of challenge to our game. To see how we've completely changed the story and we haven't changed any of the logic for putting the game together. It's a brand new game now. It's going to appeal to an entirely different crowd. If we tried to make money off of it, Disney would sue us. Yeah, but it's yeah, the idea of the same logic, different story. And we didn't do a cutscene the other day, but it would give us a different cutscene. So now we just need that turret to fire a laser, or we need a laser object. So we can create a new one and drag that over there. There's our laser. We'll figure out what a good size is for it. Oh, that's going to move. So probably don't want that being the base of our scene, right? Delete that. And it's going to move, so I'll make it a character body. Character bodies are rigid bodies, so physics applies, but there's already some like preset things. I'm gonna move this up because that way we don't have to do any. If we don't do any special adjustments when we generate it, it's going to generate at the coordinate 0, 0, 0, right? Or 0, 0. So if we put that, probably want that at the bottom of our laser so that it looks like the laser shooting out of the gun at the right spot. Or center, little adjustments like that are really straightforward. But this one will interact with the ship, so we want to create a mesh. Give it names for consistency. Here's our laser beam. Then this node is our laser _graphics. or sprite. I stopped using the keyword sprite myself because we don't have sprite sheets anymore. Sprite sheets are very outdated. Sprite sheets are actually inefficient on modern equipment, unless you happen to be on something that still has a spinning disk drive. Servers still use spinning disk drives. So if you know your game is going to be launched from a server across the web or something, then it might be better to go back to sprite sheets. But most things have SSD drives these days. And with SSD drives, it's more efficient to have lots of small files instead of like a sprite sheet trying to put lots of pictures in one file, so we only have to move the read at once. And these are things we've seen. I think I haven't clicked on the warning. This one just said added. Some warnings will give nice messages. A lot of our other game engines, if we click the warning, it will have a fix automatic thing. They don't have that in Godot, but keep that in mind as you're trying out different game engines and things. So we'll go here, add a collision. I'm just going to do a collision shape this time. We'll just do a square around our laser. And probably not even the whole laser beam, right? Zoom down. I think we just probably wanted to cover part of that laser beam. There we go. Just drag it. Got the handle, drag it down. So there's still large chunks of that laser beam where it looks like it'll look like a narrow miss. Does that make sense? Or depending on the situation, use your judgment if you think the entire laser beam should be able to destroy the ship. But if the front of our laser beam misses that ship, we wouldn't want the tail end of the laser beam to destroy the ship, was my thought. If the ship's coming this way and the front missed it, actually probably don't even need that much. If the front of the laser beam misses our thing, the back of the laser beam is not going to catch it. Think about things like that. It would look a little bit off. Save this, and this is laser.scene in the objects. The movement here is pretty straightforward, right? Up here, so rename it. Consistency goes a long way. Your games are going to get very huge very quickly, so being consistent with names will be very helpful. What is this? Laser shape. The actual physical shape of it. And we can come up here and add a script. And just put that in the sensibly named folder to store the script for it. Create script. And we don't need gravity. Our laser beam's not going to jump. That's just the default for a platformer. Don't need gravity or jumping. We don't need the fancy physics movement, because what's our laser beam going to do? It only does one thing, right? Yeah.
It destroys on contact.
It destroys on contact, but it just goes up, right?
Right.
It just goes up until it hits the thing, and then it'll, and then we'll clear it out. So no matter what happens, if that laser beam's been created, all it's going to do every frame of the game is its Y position is going to change. Plus or minus. Somebody want to tell me whether we should go up, or should we go positive or negative with our Y direction to go upward? We can check right in our game engine. So that's one of the Godot, Unity, and Unreal. That's the three things about them, is we don't even have to go to the internet and look it up. It is written on the interface we're working with. So let's go look. I'll put this at 9. I'm just guessing that's way faster than the ship, so hopefully we'll get something. But again, we'll just check the number when we get there. If we come back over to the 2D view, Notice we have a ruler along the sides. It's really small. Zoom in there, you can kind of see numbers. I was thinking they'd be written a little bit bigger. You see right there's a 100. And if I scroll down,
So it'd be zero,
so if we're adding down here is 200.
it'd be minus, because everything started, we're going down from the origin point.
Yeah, the default is a platformer. So you can think of it gravity. We make gravity positive because everything tries to move that direction. Or lines in a paper. But it is an arbitrary label. We can call positive and negative whatever we want to. We can make it, we could put positive and negative at a 45-degree angle if we wanted to. All that would do is really confuse us, but we're perfectly capable of doing it. So we'll subtract by whatever that speed we set is. And that's all the laser beam does. So now we just need to create it. So to do that, I'm going to jump back over to the turret script. Actually, the turret object. So if we look at this, right now it's there in the center. The origin's there in the center. So we would say something like create it 30 pixels high, whatever that is, 30 pixels higher. It would be a lot easier if we take this and move it down about here.
I mean, if you can make it appear under the turret from the perspective, then you can have it flying out of the barrel, and then you'd want it to appear inside the turret.
Exactly. So if we grab the graphics and the shape, we'll keep the turret at 0, 0, the actual logical object. Grab just those two and move them down. And click here, notice the origin is right there. So we're not, if we just say create and then don't make any adjustments, it's going to start right there at that point.
But what I meant was, the origin doesn't need to be at the tip of the barrel if you can make the laser beam appear basically like behind the graphics of the turret.
Okay, yes.
Then it appears it's flying out, like it's forming in the turret and flying out the barrel.
Yes. So we can do that with show behind and show in front. So we would need those parameters. So that would make our thing here a little bit complicated, but that show behind, you would just always do show behind on the laser beam, not the turret. Or put the turret on the top level. Actually, that would probably work. If you put turret, expand visibility, top level, then it's always going to be behind there. I'm just going to do it at the end here, but it's going to try to generate the child at the origin. So if you need to offset it, you would just do your X and Y adjustments, plus 30 pixels in the Y, minus 25 pixels in the X, or whatever is appropriate for the situation. But for me, I'm just going to put the origin right there at the top so that the laser beam seems to start at the end of the barrel. Now if we go back to the script for that, we need to create an instance of that a laser beam that we can refer to. So we do that with this method called preload. So I'll create a variable called a laser class. If you haven't seen object-oriented programming, a class is a design, a blueprint, the instructions on how to make an object. So we have those. That's what that laser.tscn is. It's instructions on how to make it. We have it right over here, not the graphics, but in that objects folder, there's laser.tscn. This one, it's kind of hard to type the type because we know it's going to be laser type, but the compiler doesn't know that. So the compiler is going to tell us that's wrong. So this is where we need that, that type assignment operator. So just like we have plus equals, times equals, minus equals, we have those in all our languages. So I believe everybody's seen them before. We can also do that with the type declarations. The compiler, we know it's laser, so we could type that, but the compiler doesn't know it's going to be a laser. So the compiler would tell us there's an error there. So we can use that abbreviated thing, and then at compile time, when it actually creates the machine language, the compiler will know that. It just won't. Compilers can't do calculations. So when it actually compiles it, that counts as a calculation. But it can't do it ahead of time to give us the warning messages. Yeah, all errors, if you haven't seen it before, errors and warnings come from the compiler. So that's why they sometimes end up wrong, because the compilers can't process until they actually compile. So we have this method preload. That's how we load in something that already exists. The thing that already exists is this, so we can just click laser and drag it over here. And notice it gave us the file, that file path to it and everything. Let me do that again, in case you were looking somewhere else. So I put the preload method, and for the parameter in that, I just grab the object, the scene we created, not the original graphics, and just drag that scene over, and now we have a reference to that. Oops. And after do the reference. Interesting. They just changed this in Godot 4. So if you look up a Godot 3 tutorial, it has a different word, but they just changed it to use this. And so when we hit that fire button, we want to create an instance of what that class is a design for. So the actual object. So we're going to create our laser here. Again, we'll have to do the type assignment. Or I like the word, type reassignment. The colon equals operation. And we use that class we loaded in, laser underscore class dot instantiate. Oh, it's on the predictor text. Finally, on Godot 4.00 and 4.01, it did not make it on the predictor text list yet for some reason. Even though it's dynamic, it couldn't find it until we actually typed it. That was pretty much the whole reason I pulled up that example. But the instantiate method, and when you're looking at tutorials, if you see a Godot 1, 2, or 3 tutorial, it has a different word there. So try to remember that one. So that gives us the laser, and once it's created, it just moves upward, right? That's all it does. So all we need to do is create it. That should be all we need to do. Run that. Oh, whoops. This is a common mistake. Does anybody have thoughts on what I did?
You ran in the wrong tab.
We're in the wrong scene.
Yeah.
All scenes are equivalent, so our level is equivalent to all the objects we put in it. So I still had turret selected, so that's what ran. We want to run level 1. Oh, it's a little bit low. Uh-oh, my fire button's not working.
There's not.
Oh, yes, it's actually something we've already seen. I'm going to move this up over here. Something we've already seen today, and something oops. My fingers are sticky or something. I keep accidentally hitting the thing. Something we've already seen, and I forget all the time. Where do we see it? Remember when we made a timer earlier? We did all this creation stuff. And then what did we have to do after we created it?
Add child.
So it's kind of, that puts it in the hierarchy here. It's going to be behind the game when we run it, but if you're looking here, it's going to add it to that hierarchy. That's the same as click and drag over to that hierarchy. We need to add the laser. We created the theme. I have forgot this one many, many times. So another one of those things we have to remember to creating it's not enough. Once we add it to the scene, then it instantiates. And after it instantiates, all the laser does is move upward. Let's try that now. Select the right tab selected. Well, that worked pretty good. That was kind of neat, but that's not what I meant for it to happen.
Whoa.
Physics is applied, so it's pushing them around.
Cool.
We haven't done destruction yet.
Also, I will say I did mine to where it would appear behind it, like I was to make it look like it's flying out the barrel and stuff here at the end, and my turret is now Mach 7 somewhere else. Because they appeared inside each other.
Oh, okay. Yeah, different things. So something to try around. So we probably only want to fire one laser at a time. So I'm gonna make a laser underscore counter. When they set up Godot, they made everything with snake case, so that's why normally I go to camel case, but whenever I'm in Godot, since all of the methods have snake case, it's just good to be consistent. Laser counter is going to be an integer, and we'll start that at 0. Then we can say if input action not is pressed fire, and laser counter is
Would it be better to do a short time?
that would work. We can do a timer. I guess that makes sense logically.
Because then I think I understood you basically were trying to get to the 3 at once or something.
And then I was gonna get rid of the counter whenever it passed that. So let's do it at a timer instead. Laser counter still sounds like a timer. Timer, type of data, and that'll be assigned timer.new, which is just the syntax we have here for creating a new thing. In that case, we'll need to create that timer, which I guess we can create a new one every time. But it's going to be basically the same, except it's the one we saw earlier, except how many times it's going to run, right? The earlier timer just kept going, shift go back and forth, but laser it's going to run once and then stop, and we only need to start it
After we hit the button.
when we hit the fire button. So we can do all the setup in the ready function. Which Zachary said he had an error with this earlier, and I put it on the screen at break. Hopefully he got that fixed. He didn't say anything else about it.
It was the exact same. I just got an error for some reason. I don't know why.
It's still erroring now. So we create the
Not
timer,
anymore.
and then in the ready function, we have .connect with the tag timeout. A tag is like an index, just a keyword that we know is already assigned somewhere. And then we need a callback function. So I'll call it evaporate or dissipate. Seems like a good word for after so far a laser dissipates. Not really, but I couldn't think of another word quick enough. And that's a callback to a function that we need to create. So you had all that same stuff, Zachary? We can try looking at it later, see if
Yeah, but I'm kind of behind on the scripts, right? All the other scripts right now because I had to eat lunch and I go to the bathroom as well.
okay, I'm gonna send it out after class. Or the recording will be available after class where there's a pause button. So now I wanted to create that dissipate function. And we'll talk about what that does in a moment. Then after we add this, laser counter wait time, we need that on there. 1 second. Does that sound like long enough?
Between laser shots.
We'll try it. We'll see what that does. Then this is the one thing that's different. So on our laser counter, one shot, we only want that to happen once, right? It just runs down and then it's gonna dissipate the laser and there's no need to do anything afterwards. We don't need to keep doing it. I'll add that timer to the screen. Only this time we're not going to start the counter. We're just creating it, and then whenever we do this, then we'll do laser counter. Start. So this is actually kind of working into what I was doing. But now this will still let us make lots of lasers, right? So I was actually going to do this in two parts originally, but following doing your question, because how can we set a we need a condition, an and that would stop us from creating extra lasers.
Okay.
Your question.
Yeah, I just, yeah, for me, I wouldn't care if they fire a couple lasers at the same time, as long as there's time between them.
As long as there's time between them. So we don't have a good condition for this to change. So we could use a Boolean. We need something we can put in our condition. So var laser ready Boolean, and we'll just call that one true. Because right at the beginning, we're ready to fire laser, right? So we'll start our counter, and then that's what we can change here. Laser ready equal to false. Do you see a pattern in the scripts? We've seen this a few times. Right? There's a lot of things that we just set up Booleans. Oh, wait. That's when we want to make it true. When we create the laser, then we'll make it false. Laser ready equals false, so that we can't fire again. So if we press the space bar and laser ready is true, we don't have to necessarily do a comparison. Right? Some people like to put laser ready equals true, just for clarity in the code, I guess. But laser ready is going to return true or false on its own. So if we push the button and we're ready, it's like a laser. We just drained the charge from the laser, so we can't fire it again yet. Set that to false. Add a laser to screen. Start counting down, and when the counter finishes, then we change that back to true. That was my thought on it. So we can only fire one laser at a time. See if that works. One second between them, pretty quick. That is kind of neat how they're bouncing off. So see that rigid body stuff is still there. So it's not spinning, but if it was a full rigid body, those things would be spinning. So we need the collision, what the laser collides with. It's creating that, and I'm going to make it go a little bit further. So I'm going to double that, maybe even further. So it's like a big, super high-powered laser. It takes a minute to charge up. Only have so many things. And here's we can do our collision, right? We can check and see if that collides. If the laser collides with the ship. Okay. Might as well do that every frame of the game, right? So Yeah, to check, we create a variable to hold all of our collisions. I'm just gonna call it collider. So collider, and then the type here is always object. Because whatever is in our game, we know it's a game object. That's the only thing we can collide with. So we do have to, that's the only type we can return from this built-in method. Um, from the way we're looking. So I'm gonna add something to this. I was trying to think of a good way to describe it without using the word laser. Probably could have come up with a better place to put it. So to check our collisions, we usually use what's called a raycast. So a raycast, there's lots of different ways we could do it. We could throw lots of things out there. We could refer to this collider itself and see if there's a collision. I'm actually going to get rid of this collider. That's why I wasn't too worried about it. I wanted to talk about the thing earlier. But this collider is a box. Or earlier we had the polygons, a lot of processing, right? So a better way to do it, which gave me pause because I didn't think ahead and realize that this was going to show up first talk about when we were talking about a laser. You can think about like a laser pointer. With a single bit, we can look off in one direction. One bit is going to be way quicker to process than the square, even, right? So instead of, I'm going to get rid of the collision shape here. Well, I'll leave the collision shape because it would show the warning message, so we'll just ignore that. But we can add a new component in here called a raycast 2D. If I zoom in, see how we got that little blue arrow? By default, it's pointing down. Strong way for us. If we look over here at different properties of it, target position, 50 pixels in the Y. So there's just like a laser pointer trying to look 50 pixels in the Y direction. We probably want to go to the other one. So however tall that is, which how tall is that? There's 100, 200. Looks like we need to go negative 250. Oh, that's all right. You can also just grab that little dot and drag it where it needs to be. So we want to look in that direction and see if there's a ship right about there, right? Right about where the front of that laser goes. I moved it off a little bit because I'm not necessarily worried about perfection here. We're not in the final version of the graphics. So we'll look right there to see if there's if something exists. So now I'll just give that another name. Actually, I'll leave it at the default. Just leave it at a raycast thing. Now we want to refer to that in our script to see if something's there. So we're gonna, if we click and drag.
So it's when the wrong thing touches something.
Mhm.
Not, you know,
Yeah, just the very front. Well, if it's anything anywhere on there.
anywhere on.
Yeah, that it only looks, that's the extent of where it looks. So I think in this case it probably will touch the back. It will work for the back one, but if we increase the speed on it, it'll look accurate. Just gonna go over some basic parts of the tools. So it's gonna look that far ahead, and if anything is in that distance. So think about like standing on the floor. We would do that to check if the character is standing on the floor by looking down. We can just look down several meters and then start doing stuff before the character gets back to the floor. Like in a big fancy animation, your character is going to go to like the bending the knee animation, moving their arms to the landing position before they hit the ground. So it checks the whole area very, very efficiently. But we need a reference to it. We can click and drag over, so that's how we would refer to it. Or mentioned this the other day, if you click and then hold control and drag over, it gives all of the code that we need. So this annotation at on ready, that's an alternative to putting it in the ready function. We'll create this variable and then assign it to the thing that we drug from the hierarchy channel over there. And then we can just ask for that. Notice it gave us the variable name and everything. So that raycast ID dot, which word is it? Well, an example, but I didn't scroll the right spot in the example. Oh, there. So if that, we can say get collider. So that will return an object. But there is a little addendum here. Because what happens if that's not colliding with something? Right? That could give us a problem. So if we're doing that, we want to check and make sure. So if this exact thing here, if that is not null, then we'll grab all the stuff from the collision. That makes sense? We just check to make sure that it's not empty. It is actually touching something. And then we'll just check to see what type it is. And there's a couple ways we could, couple different things we could do. What did I do in my example I have pulled up? Let me see if I did anything useful in the example or if I have to change that. Yeah, it's not actually an example of this I'm looking at. Actually, the example I'm looking at is to knock off the level 1 of Mario. Like an exact example of it. I downloaded a picture of level 1 of Super Mario Brothers and put that behind the tile set while I put the level together. So it's like exact measurements and everything. And just a different storyline on it. But it has a lot of these properties. Is that what I checked for? I think it's just the name. Well, I probably should just show this out. Instead of just copying this, let's just print out whatever it sees. Which, right? I think it's just print. So we'll print whatever's in that collider. And let's track this down, and we'll track down the names. That's probably about all the time we have for today. Oh, whoops. Wrong scene. I'll change it. So if it's not, if whatever that raycast sees is not empty, so it does see something, we'll grab whatever it is and then print that out so we can see what we have to work with. This is going to go in a couple steps. So we run. Notice it had X-wing, then a number, character body. There's different properties we would have. Trying to think of name. Notice name is something we can use. And that there's X-wing and then a number, which it gave us because it has to keep those separate. The name's not quite going to work for us. What we're going to do is add it to a group. Which one do we want to add? X-wing. And or give it some sort of identifier. That's probably quicker here. We'll see how the one built in, but there's a built-in one we can use. We can just, I'm going to come over to the X-wing script and just add some sort of variable. Is ship, and that's a Boolean, and I'll assign it true and never change it or anything. So now there's a variable in anything that is a ship that we can check. So go back over to the script. There's one of those built into the game engine that we'll see, but we've already been at this for a while, right? And I'm trying to make sure there's plenty of time to finish up. So now if I come back over to the laser one, we can check that as it. So if collider dot is ship, and this is something this particular language lets us do this very bad form. For those who had C family, worked in any C family programming languages, this is where we would want an interface. We want to check an interface to make sure it is that, because there's a lot of things that collider could hit that wouldn't have the is ship variable, and it's going to throw an error here. So we know the only thing there is to hit is those ships. So whatever it is going to have this. So we're looking at a variable. So now if it prints here, if it prints, that means it does recognize that it is uniquely a ship. And it doesn't matter which one. Oh, actually, the name part wasn't useful. I'm just going to print that's a ship. So like a confirmation. We know for certain we're hitting a ship that way. And if we look at our, you can see it says that's a ship. And let's see if I can do another one that just misses altogether. I go way over here. Not gonna miss.
Your bullet's too slow.
Can we still see it scrolling maybe? There's a clear button.
Fix everything has collision
Let
and ping pong.
me clear it, so now that everything's off there. Oh. Well, I thought I would miss it. There it goes. So you can see it didn't add more words to it. So it uniquely identifies what a ship is. And we can do the same thing. So in our case, that's all we're going to hit. Normally we would want to check that. So I'm going to come back over to that X-wing one and make another function. Explode. Which we're getting short on time, so y'all can draw an explode animation, and then if we're on the X-wing, as we have the graphics, we can click, hold control, and drag those over. Now we have a reference to the graphics, so we could change those to anything else. if we wanted to, right? In particular, graphics and the inspector have this texture property. So if we right click, copy property path, then we have that variable X-wing graphics dot texture, and then assign that equals. I think if I copy the value. Oh, copy there. It'd be copy value from here. Straight in laser. Equals the path to the laser picture. Does everybody see how to change that? Because we're very quickly running out of time. So the graphics, we got a reference to those. Put that in a variable, and then the graphics node is storing a texture. So we can say just dot texture, and then give it a file path to a different picture. In particular, an explosion picture. I'm just going to remove it from the scene. So, giving a little preview there, so you can try to do the next step. Try to do anything fancy? It's just one command to remove it. It's all built in there. Queue free is the command, and we can just queue free self. That will refer to itself. Oh, why didn't it like that? Oh, I have to do self.queue free. I think that'll remove it. Oops, not that level. This level. Hit run. Let me check my example really quick. Oh, it is just queue free. Don't need the self part. That should remove it from the game. Or then it delete it. Oh, sorry. We have to call that method now. So that's in the X-wing script. So if we go back to the laser script, when we collide, then we can say collider dot explode. Is that the name of the method? Yes. So then we just call that method from over here. And now it should dissipate. So don't have the animation, but we can quickly get rid of them. And when we do that, we probably want to get rid of the laser too, so it doesn't do that right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the main gun on the Death Star. That's just one of the little defensive turrets.
Yeah.
So they're in laser.
The one stormtrooper that could.
After we do that, then we can call queue free here. Or self.queue free. The self is always implied. That's like self.position, self.rotation. Self is always implied, but it does make the code a little bit clearer. So we could also do collider.queue free, then self.queue free.
And collider says to take, so the collider dot explode says to take the explode function from the thing you collided.
Yes. Which all it does is call queue free.
But I was just double checking that's how that's working there.
Mm-hmm.
The collide part says take something from the thing you hit.
Yeah, and notice how we can directly access both variables and parameters there. hopefully that's enough. Y'all can start playing around with it because well, now we're down to 59 minutes. I wanted to have an hour to mess around with stuff, but we can destroy our ship and then the laser's gone. So we have to destroy ship again.
Already more accomplished than stormtroopers.
Yep. Move left and right. Our ship should be moving down. We saw that logic the other day, but we saw movement. We know how to do a collision. Set a collider down there at the bottom, do just like we did in the Game Maker one. Right, no new logic there. But the big thing was notice how we're able to examine the tool we're using if we use logic we already know. So that I think it was last week, a different Space Invaders. And then for a general thing about game development, same logic, completely different story. Last time it was aliens invading Earth. And this time it's
Rebel scum invading this stuff.
yes. So I guess we'll finish this out on Monday. We'll go ahead and finish it if you want to mess around with it more. Hopefully that'll get a little bit of a start. There's lots of tutorials. We still need to see changing scenes and stuff, but I wanted to make sure there's at least an hour to actively do stuff. And we've been at this for a while. If we did another hour, at this point, it's probably hard to take in more information, right? That's why I'm not being as usually, if y'all haven't noticed, usually not as thorough at 3:30 as I am at 1 o'clock. Minds are fresh after 2.5 hours. Our brains start to get tired. We need to take a break and work. I was hoping to get at least one step further so we could do like a cutscene and see the change between an intro cutscene or get that. But we still need to do that and animations for the bare minimum of the game. So we'll get back to that Monday and finish this up. See, it's a little bit more time consuming than the Game Maker one, but we actually have a whole lot more control over that. In Game Maker, when we were doing that same logic in Game Maker, there wasn't a lot of, this is one way we could do it. It's like, this is how we do it. So it was somewhat restrictive. Does anybody have any questions about that? I'll give it a second, see if anything shows up in the chat room. If you do, let me know. I'm always happy to help. Yeah, that was 5 seconds. So I assume nothing popped in the chat room. So I assume there's no questions. If you have any, let me know. Otherwise, you all have a good holiday weekend. And on Monday, we'll be starting about 15 minutes late on Monday. I'll send out an announcement reminding you about that on Wednesday. So when you get here on Monday, if the door is still closed, we'll be doing something. It should be done way before 1 o'clock, but when I put it on the calendar, it was 12 to 1 in this room. So we'll just go ahead and push our start time back 15 minutes in case it does run a little bit long. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you on Monday. The video of that should be up in a few minutes if you want to grab that, follow along. Everybody have a good holiday.